You know a dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows. And a dreamer's just a vessel that must follow where it goes. Trying to learn from what's behind, and never knowing what's in store, makes each day a constant battle just to stay between the shore. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Maxwell Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger, and this is another episode of What's Your Excuse, where I interview people who have overcome adversity or thrived in spite of difficult life circumstances, people who have struck out on their own and started a unique business, experts who have real world tested advice to help you overcome the excuses that are holding you back, and people who I just personally find interesting or inspiring. You can find the show at whatsyourexcuseshow.com or on theblindblogger.net. You can also say to Alexa or Google, play What's Your Excuse, and we are on Roku at Knob TV, KNOB-TV. I do hope you will check out the website, especially my new course, 8 Weeks to Podcast Guest Rockstar, where it's an interactive course where I will teach you how to take advantage of podcasts like mine to share your story and promote your brand. I also hope you will visit my sponsor, Chip Edwards at CreateMyVoice.com. He will help you create a complete voice branding strategy that takes advantage of Alexa, Google, their related smartphone apps, and all the new wearables that are out there. He will even be able to tell you about the virtual reality and how you can take advantage of that in the future. He's really the expert in the area. You can say, Alexa, play Create My Voice, or you can say, okay, Google, talk to Create My Voice, or just go to createmyvoice.com. So today I am blessed. I have an amazing woman with me. Her name is Sha. She is the Chief Excitement Officer at Sparks of Fire LLC. She's also the host of the Power of Investing in People podcast and the Hey, What Do I Say live broadcast, I guess you'd call it, on Facebook. You can definitely find her at ShaSparks.com. She has a wonderful story. She has basically overcome a victim mentality, I think we'll call it once we get to talk about it, that she learned from her father, who was forced into the military in Korea. She eventually realized that she was continuing some very bad habits as far as the way she saw herself that led to addiction, depression, low self-image, bullying others, which I find surprising, and I'm going to ask her about that now. She realizes that if she can turn her tragedy into treasures, that anybody can do it, and I definitely agree with that. And her goal is to help leaders to reignite their passion so they can focus on their purpose and turn it into profit. Again, you can find her at ShaSparks.com. So Sha, welcome to What's Your Excuse?
Thank you for having me, Maxwell. I love the singing in the beginning. You made me tear up, so thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your patience, because no sooner than I tell you I don't edit or get rid of mistakes, I ended up messing up my own intro and had to do it twice. So we're all about authenticity here on What's Your Excuse, even if some of the quote experts would say that sometimes you should be a little less authentic and honest with people. But I'm here to help people grow and overcome their excuses. I'm not here to be the poster child for I'm doing everything right, because I ain't. So why don't you, so there's something the one thing I really want to talk to you about, just to get us started here, because it's going to cause me to question some of the things that I say to people. And so that's why I really want to start with this idea where you say you had to get over this idea that you didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I have often told people that one of the things that got me started going from depression and a failed carnival business to starting my first online business in 2007 was the idea that I didn't have a choice, that this was the only option available to me. And also during the years of dragging our carnival around the country, my dad would often say, when we made opening, he would say, "What did we have a choice?" So, talk a little bit about what it means to you, and you know, and how people can overcome this attitude, or if maybe all of us, you know, just answer. Just go ahead and jump right in there, please.
Yeah, thank you. So you read a little bit about my dad. So growing up, I was started off in life as daddy's little girl. And then about 4 or 5 years old, something shifted in him. And I was an absentee father, and he was not a good husband to my mom. And it just, I had, lots of animosity towards him. I'm the youngest. I have two older brothers. And because of, him living life right before I came along, I have no idea what happened. I was 4 or 5. So, I'm the child, so I don't really know. And about 6 months before he passed away, well, let me back up. 5 years before he passed away, he actually became my best friend. And I feel like it's because I healed, it naturally overflowed onto him, and he was able to heal as well. And I was able to talk to him in a way that was very loving and forgiving and compassionate rather than accusatory of anything. So during the last 6 months of his life, I heard the story of how he was drafted into the army and shipped off to Korea. Now, I had known that he was in the army my whole life, but until that point, I always thought he enlisted. I had no idea that he was drafted. And he started sharing the story, and his words is that he was a farm kid, and now he's thrust into the army that is completely unknown and uncomfortable and has no idea, lots of uncertainty. And when he came back, he was, into the reserves. And again, same type of mindset. I have no idea. I'm very uncertain, all these things. And he said something about, well, I didn't have a choice. And I don't even know the context of how he used it, but that phrase just stuck, like, cling to my soul, like somebody had just said the words that I had been living by for so long. And I didn't even realize that I had been living by those words at parts of my life. And what I mean by that is, so he was saying he didn't have a choice because he was drafted, right? And I, at one point in my life, was in a long-term abusive relationship. And I remember thinking over and over again during that, enduring, surviving that abuse, is I don't have a choice to leave. This guy's going to kill me. And I think, okay, so did my dad have that mentality of I don't have a choice? And that is what created his not so great choices in being a husband and not so great choices in being a father. And how did that shift into me, hereditarily? A lot of time, I think research is showing now that trauma is showing up in people from generations before. So it does get into the genetic code, the DNA of who we are. And I just started to think, well, wait a minute, that's interesting, because in relationships, I thought I didn't have a choice. But in business, I thought the opposite. I didn't have a choice but to succeed. And so in one way, it helped me, right? I took that determination and it propelled me forward. But in others, it was also hindering me and stopping me. And fear was showing up. And so I started to twist it. And like you said before, the victim mentality, twist it to be a treasure mentality, a thriving mentality, rather than just surviving.
Yeah. So even in your life, you this phrase "I don't have a choice" was both positive and negative.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be afraid that I'm giving my followers a bad message when I tell them that a lot of the things I've done it's because I didn't think I had a choice.
No, not, of course it's your messaging, right? I mean, if that's what it's true for you, then yes. And like I said, it was twofold, right? In my personal relationships, I used it as an excuse, right? What's your
Okay.
excuse? That's the name of your show. That's what I was using. I didn't have a choice. That was my excuse for staying in that relationship. But on the other side, professionally, I was using it as I knew where I came from and I didn't want to go back there. So I didn't have a choice but to succeed.
Okay.
And you're using it the same way, right? So it's using it as the except to succeed. I don't have a choice except to succeed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that makes me feel better. That was the one question. I mean, because they say that, there's an old expression, as long as you think you might be crazy, you don't have to worry about being insane, So I feel like as long as I continue to question whether or not I'm serving my audience, I am probably doing all right. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask the question. And people who have followed my show know that I quite often ask questions just for Max in hopes that I will learn something and that the rest of people watching or listening will benefit from it or will be just as curious about that question as I was. So, for somebody who's been spreading this message of what's your excuse for 6 years now, it's a responsibility that I don't take lightly, and I felt like you were the perfect person to ask. So,
Well, thank
now
you.
that we've decided that the idea of not having an excuse can be a good thing, how do you go from that place of fear and victim to the place of strength? Are there some things that work for you that you can share with my audience that will help them maybe start the process of unlocking themselves from being that victim?
Such a great question. So I'll tell you my story, what worked for me. And, of course, everyone is different, so everybody has their own. So my piece of advice is to really explore what will work for you. And with that said, for me, I'm a God girl. I'm a very spiritual person. I pray. And, for you, it could be universe or, whatever you look to, whatever you worship. But for me, it was about praying. And I had been journaling for probably 20 years now, but at the time it was probably about 10 or so. And I had been journaling. And to me, the journaling was like writing God a letter. And so I was asking the hard questions about myself. I had been in that relationship for 12 years. I had just gotten out and I knew I needed to heal. And I knew that I didn't want to be in a relationship like that again. Statistics will tell you that most women who have been or most people who have been in a domestic violence situation will repeat it and they'll go into another one. And I didn't want to be that statistic. I wanted to change the narrative of it. And so I thought, why was it so easy for me to fall into that? And I had started one counseling in the first week. He was in a car accident, and I was able to move out of the relationship. So as soon as the car accident happened, I had started counseling the first week. So that was extremely helpful. And then two, I read two books that changed my life, and those books are Women Who Love Too Much. And even though women is in the title, it goes for men too. And the other book is called Boundaries. And what I realized in the book Women Who Love Too Much is that it was familiar, right? So the relationships that we get ourselves into are for us to either heal from our past, from our childhood, or they're to help us move forward in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's marriage or what have you. And so for me, what it really allowed me to do was look back at my relationship with this guy, but also look at the relationship with my dad and my mom and my brothers and my grandmother. So it was all the family dynamics, all the closest people to me had these characteristic traits, right? And it was not a positive situation, it was a negative situation. Now, they probably weren't aware of that's what they were doing, but because it was my quote unquote normal, I didn't know there was any different, right? So when I meet this guy who has very similar traits, very familiar, I thought that was the norm. He had just taken them to the millionth nth degree, right? And it was extremely severe, unfortunately. However, what it made me realize is, oh, when someone is sarcastic, that can be anger in a clown suit. And anger, they're not, maybe they're angry at you, maybe they're not angry at you, maybe they're angry at someone else, but yet they're portraying sarcasm. And he was very manipulative. My ex was very manipulative. And one of the things that I learned with sarcasm is it can also be a way that people try to manipulate you. And so once I learned that, I just started to have conversations specifically with my dad and my mom of, so what you're really, I'm asking you, are you wanting me to do something, or are you trying to, tell me that you're angry? And the funny thing is that they didn't even realize they were doing it. Right?
Okay.
Most people don't realize that they're manipulative or they're being sarcastic until someone lets them know that that's what they're doing. And I wasn't accusing them in any way, shape, or form. I was just asking because that's how I was taking it. And I said, and what that does for me is it creates this, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you kind of feeling. It wasn't really warm and fuzzy and nurturing. And when they heard that, they were like, huh, okay. And maybe the fifth time they heard that, they were finally like, okay, I got it. I will do better to not do that. But in the beginning, they were completely unaware. They didn't even, like my dad, I was like, are you trying to manipulate me? And my dad was like, manip. Like, I don't even know what that word means. Like, can't even pronounce that word. And I'm like, I get it. I understand. And unbelievably, and I guess, to me, unbelievably, is how our relationship shifted from, back when I was a little girl and I was daddy's little girl. And then, I spent many years being the angst teenager rebelling against authority, especially him. And, we didn't get along. We didn't speak. We just, I was that typical hated their parents teenager, right? And even in my 20s, I was like, years went by and I lived an hour from my dad. And there were times I didn't even talk to him because we were just angry at each other. And so once I learned about me, I was able to have different conversations with them. So the first step is to really become aware of who you are and who you're being. I know that was a long answer.
Well, we enjoy long answers and stories here on what's your excuse. We're definitely into them. But as you were describing that, it got me to thinking about something that I hear all the time, but nobody ever applies it to their family. And that is the famous book, You Are the Sum of the Six People That You Spend the Most Time With.
Right.
And nobody applies that to their family. They all think they all think the author was talking about six strangers. But
Right.
if you spend a lot of time either in person or emotionally over the phone thinking about that person on the internet, however you're connected to these people, if you're spending a lot of time with your family and they're those six people you spend the most time with, and they are not nice people, then, or they are, abusive, manipulative, they have some sort of issue, it's not surprising that being exposed to that group, you would have the same sorts of, oh man, that is just, I tell people that one of the reasons I do this show is so that I can have the occasional aha moment. So thank you for giving me that one.
Well, thank you
But that is something I wonder if why more people don't think about it that way. I mean, your life is definitely an example that it's the truth. I mean,
yeah.
and of course, the Bible says when you walk with the wise, you will be wise, but when you walk with the stupid, you will be stumbled. So,
Right. Right.
So, man.
Well, and the thing is in an abusive home, And I say the word abusive, but that's mental, physical, emotional abuse. It's not always physical, it's emotional and mental as well. If that's all you know, if you only know what you know, there's a whole lot outside of what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And right. And so the second question I started to ask myself is, what is it that I don't know that I need to know in order to move forward? And
And
what
what were some of the answers to that question?
I needed to know how to love healthy and how to receive love in a healthy manner. Because and I how to what love looks like in a healthy way. I knew what love looked like in an unhealthy way. I needed to have role models, and I started a church here locally, or I'm starting member of a church locally, and just really started to pour into my best friend and her family, and spent lots of time with them every Sunday after church, and really got to see how a mother listens to their children. A mother of five listens to their children. How a father talks to their children and nurtures them and loves on them. Completely different. It was totally foreign than what I grew up with.
Yeah. Did the issue of deserving or not deserving come into this with you?
Absolutely. I think when you have that kind of if you've ever been yes, because going back to the self-worth place, right? So if you've ever been beaten up mentally by another person, you start to doubt your own worth, your own how you deserve, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was I had been beaten up again mentally and physically, verbally, but because the scars on the outside can heal, it's the scars on the inside that take a long time to heal. And that's what I needed to heal. So I had not just came from, in a relationship like that. Again, it goes back to my family. They weren't encouraging people. It was more of an insulting type of situation, because they didn't know how. They didn't know how to encourage. They were never encouraged, right? So I go back to their parents. They were never taught to encourage. So because they weren't, so anyway, so I'm figured out myself that I had this, I didn't deserve to be loved in a proper, healthy way because I was not able to receive it. And so when I was in I call it a healing phase, and it was years, and I still feel like, we're always healing, right? If you're on the right track, you're always learning about yourself and healing. But this would dedicated point of time, I was literally like pouring into like healing me. And what I realized is that I didn't feel good about me because no one had taken the time to build me up. So I had to shift my mindset from being, now it's a victim, right? Victim
Right.
mentality, victim mindset. I called it mediocre mindset
Okay.
to a positive mindset and growth mindset. And how could I shift that? And I started out again journaling everything that I said negatively to myself. I had I would write down a positive affirmation about it and to switch it to read over the opposite.
Right.
And I would just kept reading those over and over again. And that allowed my brain to get kind of repetition to sink in. So whenever that thought of, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you're not whatever enough, I could have, well, I am beautiful. I am smart. I am good enough. I had the opposite already written down. But again, if I didn't know, if I didn't even realize that that's what was the loop that was playing in my brain, I wouldn't have even thought to write down the opposite.
I'm glad that you shared that because it really is in sync with something that I try to teach people through my podcast interviews, and that is that none of these techniques that we all talk about, whether it's law of attraction, affirmations, prayer, meditation, vision board, none of these things we talk about work overnight. They all take
Right.
practice and repetition. And I'm just so happy that you shared that you actually had to write down a list of positive words to show yourself or remind yourself when you started thinking negative ones, because that's where it starts. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to build up a routine, you have to build up that muscle memory or psychological muscle strength. And I just wish more coaches would say, hey, this works, but it's not going to work tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am still speaking with Sha Sparks. She is a living fearless coach and trainer certified. She's also the host of the Power of Investing in People podcast, the Hey, hey Shay, What Do I Say on Facebook. She's written a book called How to Find Your Voice, and she's a co-founder of the, oh, credit. Escapes me right this minute, but it's a collaborative book project. I think it's a Books of Fire or something. So you can find her at shasparks.com. Um, so you found this lady at church and you started spending time with her and her family, seeing how she and her husband treated their children, even though they had a large family. Are there some other people that have become part of your circle that also help keep you in a more positive mindset?
Absolutely. I am all of those things that you mentioned, coach, speaker, author, podcast host. I'm also a hairstylist, and I am behind the chair, trying to boost up all of my clients. And when I started to heal, and I would learn certain things about myself, and the one that I can remember the most was saying how I just learned how to be vulnerable. They were like, what does that mean? And so I would explain to them, what it means for me, what I did to figure it out, and what I'm doing to continue to step out of my comfort zone in order to learn more about myself. They would go and recreate something that I said with their, whether it was their spouse or their coworker or their children, and they got a good result as well. And so then they would come back in 4 to 6 weeks and they would say, oh my gosh, because of what you said, that really showed me that I can do it too. And now they're doing, X, Y, and Z. So it became a ripple effect. And then what they started to do was say, have you thought about being a life coach? Have you thought about being a speaker? You have so much knowledge, you could really write a book. And because they started to pour into me, I just went, maybe they're onto something. And so that is then when I started to really dive into, okay, what does that look like? What does a podcast look like? What does being a certified life coach look like? And I had accidentally, divinely on purpose is really what it was. But, to me, it was accidentally, came across this workshop that I was actually working with a coach to do my coaching business. And I came across this workshop to help clarify my message, because my coach had sent me going, you now have to figure it out. You have to figure out who your target audience is and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I thought that's what I was paying you for.
Yeah.
Okay. So I found this, I found this clarify your message workshop in Nashville. And so I went, and I kind of was thinking that maybe I'm a communication coach of some sort, like helping people, have difficult conversations with whether it's their boss, their spouse, or their children, or, loved ones, whatever. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm having a problem. Like I was just kind of stuck, and we were on the second day. And I mentioned it to some friends that I had met there. I said, I feel like I'm stuck. And they said, oh, you should talk to the other life coach in the room. I said, oh, I didn't realize there was another life coach there. And there's probably 35 of us there. So they showed me who she was, and I went over and started talking to her. And I said, can we sit next to each other at lunch and so we can talk? And she's like, absolutely. So here's this woman sitting next to me at lunch, and and we're talking about what we're learning so far. And she says to me, "So who are you certified through?" And I said, "Well, technically I'm not certified." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Wait, do you think I should be certified?" And she said, "Actually, I do." She said, "I believe coaches that aren't certified aren't really, in her words, they're not really taking their craft seriously. They're not taking their profession seriously." And I said, "Oh, that's very true. I get that from being a hairstylist. I totally get that." And I said, "Do you recommend any certification programs?" Now, I have zero idea what this person has, right? But I just
Yeah.
kind of know of who she is. And she says, "Well, I have my own certification program." And I said, "Okay, well, how long is it? A year?" And at the time I was like, do I have a year? Could I invest a year? And she said, "If you don't do the whole program, at least come to this fearless conversations workshop in a couple of months." And I was like, well, that aligns with the communication coach. Absolutely, I'm there. So I get there, and I had started to research. I kind of knew who she was by this point. And is it okay if I say who she was, who she is?
If you can provide us a link to her so that I can give her credit, absolutely.
Yeah, I will.
I'm sorry, did you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
So
yeah,
provide.
definitely mention her. Yeah, one of the things I am actually known for myself is mentioning names of people who have helped me on other people's podcasts. So definitely, the lady's name, and continue your story, please.
Yes, absolutely. So her name is Rhonda Britton, and she had her own TV show called Starting Over, and it went for several seasons. She actually has a couple of Emmys for it. She's written, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 best-selling books. She has created this fearless living coach certification program. And I went to the first workshop, and by the first break, within 2.5 hours, I was like, wow, I feel so supported. I've never felt support in my life. I'm pretty sure I need to sign up for this course. And what's even funnier is she started to talk about, in the first 2.5 hours, talk about dirty coaching. And I was like, what is dirty coaching? And she said, dirty coaching is giving your opinion, is giving advice, is giving it, that's consulting. But a lot of people call it coaching, when coaching is really asking questions. And I loved that she had, make the distinction between the two. And anyway, long story short, I mean, I went through the program, and during the middle of the program, my dad passes away. And had I not been in that, I don't know, had I not been in the program or around this supportive group of people, I don't know how I could have handled it, because I had lost my mom 2 years before. So it was just grief upon grief. And I was able to really come from a place of loving my dad fully and completely without ever expecting anything back. And just being able to be there in the last 2 weeks of his life while he was in the hospital.
Wow. And that happened while you were going through the training for your coaching certification.
Yeah, I had just started. I think it was probably like 3 months in. And, I had, like I said, I had the support. Not only did I have the support of my mentor that you get with the program, but I had a support from Rhonda herself. I had support from, the other people that were in the coaching program with me, because you're assigned people. I mean, it was just amazing, the people that had reached out to me to really support me and continued to check on me throughout the program, make sure that I was doing okay and taking care of me, which was, I think, as growing up in the house that I was in and the relationship I was in, and being a hairstylist, I rarely take care of me because I'm so busy taking care of other people. And this was the first time that I felt like someone was really concerned about making sure that I was being taken care of, even though they weren't maybe physically doing something. Just by them checking on me was making me take care of me.
Yeah, totally understand that. And, you know, I just, a question just occurred to me. You know, you are a stylist or have been a stylist. Do you think that as a whole, stylists, people who are caregivers, possibly like nurses and doctors, do you think they tend to be uh, kind of people that have trouble realizing their own worth and supporting themselves?
Mm, that's a really great question. It's a really great question because I just got off the phone before I got on this call with one of my best friends from, elementary school, who's a nurse, and she just had a really bad breakup. And she has always, I don't necessarily know if she's had low self-worth, but she's always taking care of other people. I think as a caregiving society, we tend to think that taking care of ourselves is deemed as selfish.
Right.
And that's not true at all. It's not being selfish to take care of ourselves. It's not being selfish to take care of our needs.
Yeah. And my favorite expression in that area is when doctors will say the mother of a family can't get sick because if the mom gets sick, there's nobody to care for her. And I'm glad that in the coaching world, we're now starting to come around to the idea that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't sustain your business and continue to take care of your clients.
Absolutely. And so from that standpoint, when my dad passed away, I had been practicing taking care of myself so well that when I was able to take care of him, it came from a place of overflow rather than a place of depletion where I just needed to give because that's what I was supposed to do, quote unquote, supposed to do or expected to do.
Right. It came from love instead of from obligation.
Absolutely.
I tell you, you're, the journey that you've been on and continue to be on. It's amazing. It's yours is one of those stories that when I hear it, I'm like, it's a good thing I'm not into comparison because if I was, I'd be in big trouble today. So you have noticed this among other caregivers. Is there something we can say to ourselves? Uh, is there a technique we can use to remind ourselves or to start thinking of ourselves as having value? How do we get from that place of thinking everybody else is more important to knowing that we are just as important?
That's a really good question. So I took a workshop a year ago, actually, in October, a year ago in October, and it was called Fearless Body. So it was with the Fearless Living Institute, which is everything that I'm certified in. I'm also certified and able to teach now for Fearless Body and train in it. And one of the techniques they had us do was look in the mirror and say to yourself whatever your soul was calling you to say. Meaning, if your soul was really wanting you to say, you're handsome, you're good looking, you're beautiful, then that's what you would say to yourself over and over again, saying, I am, and those things. For me, it was like I knew immediately as soon as I looked in the mirror and said, okay, soul, what do you need to hear? And it was, I love you. And we did this for 3 days. And every time we entered the room, we had to look in the mirror and do this. And every time we exited room, we had to look in the mirror and do this. And the first day was in tears every time I looked in the mirror and said, I love you to myself. Because one, that's not something we're ever taught to do.
No, that's egotistical. That's
exactly.
Self-centered. That's
right.
That's crazy town.
Right, exactly. That's crazy talk. Like, you're so into yourself that you're going to tell yourself you love you.
And you're using a mirror, by the way.
Yes, of course. And you're really yeah. And I just went, Wow, I didn't realize how much I was so denying my own self-love because I was so worried about all of those things you just said. Who does she think she is? Is she egotistical? Is she all of this? And by the third day, I was dancing to that mirror because I was like, oh, I get to tell myself I love you again. Yay. And that just saying that now, I get chills all over my body because I just know how important and instrumental that was for me. So that might be instrumental to your listeners. It might not be. But I dare you, I challenge you to ask yourself, what is it that your soul needs to hear? And I really say that to yourself in the mirror on a regular basis.
Right. Now, I'm going to make some coaches mad about right about now, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's my brand. It's how I do things. Um, for me, if I were looking into that mirror right now, the words that I personally need to hear, and I'm glad you said them to me earlier this morning, is that I'm talented. I have a real hard time believing that I am a good speaker, a good singer, a great storyteller, those sorts of things. A talented podcast interviewer. These things, when people say them about me, I often have to stop myself from arguing with them.
Mm.
Some days I'm better about it than others, and accepting and saying thank you and going, yeah, they're right. But other days I'm like, I just don't know. So, when I did my intro and you said that I almost got you some tears from the singing. That's something I do, even though it scares me to do it. But
Mm.
that's the one thing that I need to tell myself more often and stop depending on other people to tell me that is that I am
Yes.
talented.
Yes. And you hit the nail right on the head when you said we have to tell ourselves rather than depending on other people. Because if we're always depending on other people, then it won't happen. We're expecting them to fill our own needs rather than us filling our needs for us. So, yes, you are talented. And yes, I hope you start looking in the mirror and saying that because I've listened to other podcasts of yours and I'm like, this man's amazing. One, you are a very talented interviewer, but the fact that you're singing, I mean, come on, that's beautiful. And this morning it teared me up, but I listened to others. I was like, oh my God, he's singing? That's amazing. So thank you. Thank you for being
Well,
you and showing up, even though you're scared. Thank you.
yeah, that's the reason I do it because I know that for most people they think courage is not being scared, but we all know the real thing is doing something you're scared of anyway. And I remember back to that kid that was losing his vision and his voice was changing as most of us guys' voices do. And for a while, people absolutely told me not to sing. And
Mm.
so every time I do it, it is, it's I remember the bad times, but I also, it's like, people, they, they appreciate that I'm doing it. And the really funny thing about it is I have this good friend over in the UK who I'm not going to mention because I don't want to call him out. He's a good friend. When he hears me sing live on my show or on other people's podcasts, he's like, Max, you're a crazy person. What are you doing that for? And I'm like, come on, you sing in front of 4,000 people every time you go out on stage. I would be scared of what you do. And he's like, no, trust me, what you're doing is scarier. And I'm like, I don't get it. But especially when it's songs I've sung hundreds of times and songs that have been part of my message. But it is funny what will scare some people and what doesn't scare other people. But that's the reason I sing is more because it scares me than because
Mm-hmm.
of any confidence in my talent. So that's one of those things I'm just going to have to do more often is to tell Max he's talented. And I think it's really cool how this has worked out because I was willing to be vulnerable, as you said earlier. I think we've given people a really good example of how this mirror thing works.
Mm.
Uh, and hopefully, more of y'all that are listening to this are going to say to yourself, either in the mirror or in a shiny surface while you're working, or just looking into your own mind and your own heart, you're going to say, I am.
Mm-hmm.
And when this goes live, I hope that some of y'all find the courage to post in the comments or send me an email and tell me what it is, so that I can support you and encourage you, because this is
Yeah.
not easy. This is one of those things,
Yeah.
just like finding the positive, looking in that mirror is going to take practice, I believe. Yes?
Absolutely. Yes.
I tell you,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this interview. The next time a host asks me what my favorite interview is, at least now I know which one to tell them. This has been great. So
Oh, thank you.
throughout your throughout your journey of going from somebody who thought they didn't have a choice to somebody who thinks that choices are infinite now, have you gotten to the point where you're now having to say no to some of those choices?
Actually, no to that question. So I fully, wholeheartedly believe that if you say yes, the ones who aren't for you will fall away naturally.
Okay.
And I have practiced that over and over again. And, there are a lot of people who say, well, you need to say no sometime. And I get that. And maybe it just doesn't, maybe that email doesn't get answered. Right. And that's happened to me where I didn't answer the email and I was like, oh, well, that was a missed opportunity. And yet I don't beat myself up about it. I go, well, there's nothing I can do about it, right? I could go back and sometimes I do go back and say, hey, sorry, I dropped the ball. Let's reconnect. And sometimes I don't. It just kind of is what is in my heart, what's in my energy feeling about that. So do I say no? Actually, I just say yes, and what will show up is what's supposed to show up.
Well, I asked that question because as somebody who hosts a show called What's Your Excuse, and people have said if Mike's can do it, then what's my excuse? I'm often asked about things as to whether or not I would do them, and I've gotten to the point now where some things I just have to say, no, I'm not going to do that because it just doesn't fit what I'm doing or what to do right now at this point in my life. And there are other things I say no to because I personally don't believe in physically risking my health. So
Mm.
I get people make fun of the fact that I've said I'm not interested in skydiving, bungee jumping, or swimming with sharks, for example. So,
Well, now that's a different story. That's a different story. And
but
I will say, if someone's values don't align with mine, um, it's definitely more of a no. It's
right,
definitely more of a, I need to really think about that. I really need to pray on that before I make that decision. So I will give that caveat.
yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, but just didn't ask it properly. Or as I like to say, often, quite often, my guests answer a better question than I ask. So thanks for clearing that up. Um, I'm willing to I'm willing to go wherever they take me. So you mentioned prayer, and I think it's important that I also believe in prayer, and I have for many years because there's been too many times when things didn't go the way I wanted to, and I was able to get out of those situations through not through any strength, skill, or ability of my own. I know that had to come from prayer and from help from God. So, what else? Okay, at this point, so I think we're almost to the end of the hour. Is there one thing that you think is the most important thing people should be doing if they're wanting to go from I don't have a choice to the world full of infinite choices?
Hmm. One thing. Well, that's a great question. I think it's really about investing in yourself, whether that's hiring a coach, whether that's doing your own work, whether that's, allowing your loved ones to pour into you that you trust, that are healthy. We talked about the loved ones before that, it's the 5 people that you surround yourself with could also be, toxic, and they could be your family. So I would suggest the one thing is invest in ourselves.
Okay, and it had to be kind of difficult to invest in an entire year of this coaching program when you did it, even though it does sound like you had already made a connection with the person that offering the course. Uh, is there something other than the personal connection that allowed you to make that kind of an investment?
Yeah, I had actually been researching other programs for years. And the thing I didn't like about the other programs was that they wanted you to sell their stuff, and I couldn't really add anything of my own. And I am a creative person, so I know that I had programs and books and stuff like that inside of me. And so as I was reading this and researching and talking with other sales reps from those companies, it just didn't feel right. We talk about prayer. For me, it's praying, but it's also like having a peace and a trust that I know that this is the right thing for me. And none of those were the right thing for me. So when I was talking with them, the Fearless Living Institute, when I was talking with them, the salesperson, to the kind of support they give you and what I could do with it, that I could take those tools and skills and add my own content to it. That's when I went, okay, this is going to be worth the year. And it's not only just worth the year. I mean, I've been doing it for, 2+ years now. And it's been, I'm a certified fearless living coach, but I'm also a certified fearless living trainer as well. And I just finished that literally like 2 weeks ago. And so it's an ongoing process because I know we'll go back to that, I'm worth investing in.
Okay. And since I just realized that I haven't asked you about this, could you mention the How to Find Your Voice book and the Sparks of Fire book project?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called Firestarters Book Project. So it is a collaborative book. We have co-authors from all walks of life, completely diverse. It is a creative thought leaders. So it's people who are coaches, it's people who are podcasters. And it's really about bringing to light how they were a spark of hope in the midst of change, whatever that looks like. And, it's a perfect time right now with the coronavirus and everything else that's going on. But we're always experiencing some sort of change, and it can either break you or make you. And you get to decide. You get to have that choice of how you want to move forward with it. And so that's the first collection. And then in the second collection, we'll be taking interviews to start that in the beginning phases of October. And so we have titles for 14 collections altogether. So we'll be bringing out the inaugural one shortly, and then we'll start the second one already. And so it's a combined effort, and I'm just super excited about it because we're just really promoting all the people that are in the book. And
right.
then
Will y'all be finding these people on your own, or is there a way that people who have a story that would want to contribute to the book can participate?
Absolutely. So if you go to shasparks.com, that's SHASPARKS, and look under the tab of books, it is the first one listed called Firestarters. And it does take you, there's a little link at the bottom, a little button at the bottom to take you to another website. It's called Firestarters Book Project. You could go there as well, .com, firestartersbookproject.com. Or you can just go to shasparks.com and look for Firestarters, and it'll explain everything and or explain most, and then it'll allow you to book an appointment or email us and say that you want to know more information about it. And so both, we have people that we know are reaching out to us, but we're always looking for other coaches or podcasters or anybody who deems themselves as a creative thought leader.
And that's an important expression there at the end, who deems themselves a thought leader, because just like we were talking about, saying that I love you, you're talented. There are a lot of people doing great work out there who still haven't realized that they are a thought leader, an influencer, a fire starter, to borrow your expression.
Yeah. And I didn't either. I didn't think I was a leader. And funny, people kept coming to me asking me the questions because they thought I was in charge. And I'm like, I'm not in charge here. What are you doing? And come to find out, they're like, finally somebody's like, because you're the leader. And I had to really step into that. And it's been amazing. But I didn't think I was a long time. So
Well, neither did I. It took a great friend online, Adrienne Smith, who I refer to as my blogging mama, to help me to understand it. And this is the positive side of those 5 people you spend time with.
yeah,
If you can reach out to and start creating your own circle of positive people who will encourage you and challenge you and show you the things inside you that you can't see yourself. That's the very positive side of those 5 most important people, and why I often encourage people that if they don't have at least one person in their circle yet, that they should go to my website and send me an email. So
awesome.
I'm glad, yeah, I'm glad we got to that point. I do appreciate you coming on the show. I've really enjoyed this time with you, and I look forward to following your progress. And hopefully, I'll have some of the contributors to that book on my podcast, because I'm guessing they also have some great stories to share with my audience.
Absolutely. I would definitely refer them to you. And I hope that you'll be on my podcast as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. If if anything, I am probably overexposed when it comes to podcasts, but I enjoy sharing my stories, so I never say no,
Good.
unless I just don't care for the background of the host. Maybe there's been a couple of people who I'm not into conspiracy theories, and
Mm.
I'm not into psychics. So occasionally there are some times when I say no, but very very rarely. So I'm looking forward to that, and remind people of your website, and again, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. The website is shasparks.com, and you can find the podcast, The Power of Investing in People, on there. The Facebook Live show of Hey Shay, What Do I Say? It goes to my Facebook page, and all my social media links are on there, and how you can work with me one-on-one, whether it be coaching or maybe your organization can, with like a training or a workshop. There's a way to get a hold of me on there too, as well, and the Fire Starters book. So,
Yeah.
and to purchase my other books, though, How to Get Your Voice Back, and then I was a co-author in a book called Visionistas.
Visionistas. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We had another awesome conversation today with Sha Sparks, who's an incredible woman with a great journey. She's learned a lot of wisdom along the way, and so thankful that she came and shared it with us, and shared it so openly, and was able to be vulnerable. And as usual, Mike's got some education too. I love the example of using the mirror and telling ourselves something important about ourselves each day, maybe even more than once a day. I love how she agrees with me that positive affirmations takes practice, and in her case, she had to write down the positive words to use to herself when she would catch herself speaking negatively about herself. I love how we discovered that the idea of who you associate with doesn't just apply to strangers, business associates, teachers, online community members. It applies to your family. So if you have grown up with a family that is abusive, or fails to recognize your boundaries or your brilliance, then it wouldn't be a surprise if you're going to think less of yourself. And so, in her case, as an adult, she was able to confront, lovingly confront these attitudes of her family, and help them to improve and to change and to treat her more lovingly. So sometimes that works. Uh, some of you, unfortunately, will have family that you can try to improve their behavior, but you may have to settle for improving your responses to their behavior. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but you should protect yourself. Be careful of your heart when you reach out to these family members and encourage them to see things differently than they've seen in their entire lives. But I was very impressed with Shay. I love how that she was looking for a coaching program or looking for a way to invest in herself when the Fearless Living Institute came along, and how she invested right away, something that I am great to do when it involves work or effort, but not so great at doing when it involves cash money. So for her to sign up for an entire year right away, very impressed with that. And of course, be kind to yourselves. Just like everything else, when we're talking about investing in ourselves, we should start investing in ourselves in small ways. Kind words, listening to good podcasts, reading good books, filing for a domain name or a blog name, creating that social media page. We should invest in ourselves in small ways and then give ourselves credit for the effort. Be kind to ourselves when we don't exactly meet or exceed our expectations or our goals, and continue to move forward the next day. There's nothing wrong with failure, setbacks, or struggles. All they do is make our successes and our solutions more valuable to us and the people that are following us. So I hope that you will take what Shay shared with us and what I have shared with you today to heart. I would really love to hear some of y'all's examples of the mirror exercise that we talked about earlier. And I do hope that you are finding your own ways to recognize and overcome those excuses that are holding you back. All right, I do appreciate y'all watching and listening and continuing to support me in the show, What's Your Excuse? Again, you can find me at theblindblogger.net or at whatsyourexcuseshow.com. I do encourage you to visit my 8 weeks course program on the website, theblindblogger.net/8weeks, where in 8 weeks I will help you prepare to be a great podcast guest, a guest rock star, by showing you the power of your story and helping you tell it more clearly and effectively, running you through some question and answer sessions, interviewing you for the What's Your Excuse show, booking you on 4 podcasts, promoting your interviews, and mentoring you throughout the process. That's again, it's at theblindblogger.net/8weeks, the number 8. Please do visit my sponsor, Chip Edwards, at createmyvoice.com, where he will help create a complete voice branding strategy for you. Remember, it's all about the invocation name, the word or phrases that people will use to ask for your content on Alexa and Google. Whoever claims them first gets to keep them. So if you don't claim your name, somebody else will, and they will get to control what content people hear when they're looking for you. Now, some of those people will just take advantage of your name, and they'll let people find their content. Some people are going to be scammers. You know, they're going to take advantage or try to take advantage of some of your followers, fans, and friends. So protect yourself, protect your audience, protect your brand. Talk to Chip at createmyvoice.com. Use the contact form to reach out to him. So until next time, thank you and take care out there. This is the Blind Blogger, Maxwell Ivy. Too many times we stand aside and let the water slip away. What we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids, dare to dance the tide.